Hello and welcome to a special program. My name is Joseph Feaster. I normally am the host on Community Forum, but today we want to do a special program with the school committee candidates so that you can learn who they are, what their platforms are about, and how they wish to serve here in the town of Stoughton. I have the honor of having all three of the candidates here with me today, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to learn more about them because they're going to tell you their particular story. Let me introduce the candidates, and I am going to do it in alphabetical order so I don't be accused of favoring one candidate over another. So I'm going to first introduce in the middle Jillian DeStefano, who is running for school committee. To her right is David Laurie, and sitting next to me is Jennifer Sears. So want to say welcome to this special edition of a program of the candidates for the school committee. So what I'd like to do is, because I think it's always important for our viewing audience to get a chance to know you. So I'm going to allow each of you, and I don't have any time frame. You know, if you want to take an hour, you take up the whole program and no one else will be able to speak. So I certainly will cut you off there, but I like them to be able to, you tell your story as to who you are. So I'm going to start once again. I'm going to do it alphabetically. So Jillian, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to go to David, and then I'm going to go to Jennifer. You can tell the audience background experiences, children, how many cats you have, whatever you want. You're free to go. So Jillian, is your stage.
Thank you. So my name is Jillian DeStefano. I have been in Stoughton for a bit over 10 years now. My husband and his family are longtime Stoughton residents. They own a local business here in Stoughton. I have a 9-year-old daughter. She is in 3rd grade. She's out in the South School district. She loves being in Stoughton. She loves this community. She does 4-H club. She does soccer. She does karate here. So she's very, very active. For my role that I do for my business is that I work in medical billing. It's something very specific into finance and making sure that our budgets match up, that we are upholding all billing guidelines to health insurance. For me personally, while I'm running for school committee, is I really want to make a meaningful difference here in the community. I want to be an advocate for parents and students in the school. And through the school committee, I really feel that it's going to be the most impactful. So I hope that you'll get to know me a little bit more tonight about how I feel about certain things. Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian. David.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for the candidates who are also on the stage with me. I appreciate that very much. I go back around 33 years in Stoughton, moved here with my wife. I then transitioned at the same time into the telecommunications business. Started having children. It took a while to start having children. It was funny how I moved to Stoughton and all of a sudden children started to happen. So we used to say there must be something in the water in Stoughton that helped that happen, but we were grateful for that. So I raised 3 children. All 3 of them came up through the public school system. One of them did not graduate from Stoughton, but came all the way through 10th grade, and then because of her special needs, we took her out of district to a private place, and she got her diploma within a year. So we worked that out, and that was great. So I've been working. I got active in town about 15 years ago, roughly. There was a master plan effort, and it was led by the planning board and some others. And so I was in between jobs at the time, and my wife kind of kicked me out the door, saying, "Why don't you go get involved with something?" And I said, "Oh, that seems interesting. Why don't I go?" And all these wonderful ideas. There was about 130, 150 people in a room up at, I think it was the senior center.
Yes.
Big round tables, and everybody was able to just talk about their ideal, town. What would they want? Rainbows and lollipop kind of talk. And it was really great.
I remember that meeting. I was
yeah,
there.
Yeah, those ideas were phenomenal, you know, and one of them was a high school. We ended up getting that eventually. And so I became actively involved at that point. I signed up for the town meeting, and I eventually got asked to sign up for a finance committee. And I just wrapped up my last year of finance committee, even though there's a couple more months of just kind of post-budget kind of work that I might be pulled into a meeting here or there for. But that's my story.
Great.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Okay, well, I was born in Stoughton. I was born at the Goddard Hospital, which I know doesn't exist anymore. Raised in Stoughton. I went to the South School for elementary school, then what we call the junior high. I know it's the middle school now. In Stoughton High School, graduating in 1988 from Stoughton High. And I've moved out of the town, but I'm now back living in the town, and I've lived back in the town since 2018. I am currently an educator, 28 years working with students. Currently I work for DYS. I also here in town run Girl Scouts. I'm what we call the service unit coordinator, so I have 11 troops under me, and I have my own troop of middle school girls. And I teach swimming in the town. I've worked for the YMCA. I worked when it was the JCC.
Yes.
Ames Pond I taught swimming lessons at. I worked when it was the Y, and I do them right in my backyard, so people come for private swimming lessons, and I've been doing that for years. I don't have children of my own, but I've always been involved with children, and I'm excited to get on the school committee. I have my doctorate in education, and it's something I'm just passionate about, and making sure that I know I got a great education. I was an IEP student here in town, and I was able to succeed, go to college, get my master's, my doctorate, and I know other students can do that, and I want to continue to see that happening here in Stoughton, and making sure our schools are the best that we can offer them.
Well, I mean, just to hear about your background, your interests, family, you know, David, like you, I pay attention to what my wife tells me, so you know, so I know I have to be on for dinner shortly. So definitely want to be able to do that. But you know, I guess the real question that folks will want to know is that, okay, all of you have various times as far as the number of years that you've been in Stoughton. You have all different professions that you're engaged in, but why do you want to, you know, run for the school committee? Elected office, I always tell people I don't want to run for anything but cover, but want to do that. I'm going to do I know I said before I was going to do alphabetically. I'm going to let different folks start at different times. So Jennifer, since you're closest to me, I'm going to let you start,
Sure.
and we're going to go right down
Sure.
down the.
I became a town meeting member last year, and I started attending town meetings, and it was an eye-opener to see how, you know, some of the things in town run, and I wasn't happy with it all. I think that some of the budget for the school got cut and shouldn't have. I know from the parents who I deal with between Girl Scouts and swimming lessons, they're not happy that we lost paras in the kindergarten, and I think that some things need to be definitely fixed. And one of the other complaints is the special ed in town. I've heard that too, that sometimes some of the things that are in students' IEPs are not being offered because we can't offer them. So I think that I just want to get involved so I can help look at this. How do we strengthen our schools in town? So we're getting students ready for the 21st century. We need 21st century skills for these students.
All valid issues, certainly, that need to be considered. How about you, Jillian?
So, as I said before, I really wanted to be an advocate for parents and students. I first started looking into running for school committee about 6 or 7 months ago. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I really was saying it's like how I really wanted to get involved in the community. I wanted to be an active participant. And the previous select board person had said, you know, if you really want to make a meaningful change in the town, if you want to make a meaningful change for your daughter's life, school committee is where that's at. So I started looking into it. I started talking to some of the school committee members, and really getting a good idea of like what's going on, you know, behind the scenes. Started listening in on all their meetings that they had, and I'm just really fascinated on how it all works. It's very complicated, and one thing that I can bring to this is just this finance, budgetary background, which, you know, a lot of people just don't have, and be able to dig into numbers such as that. So that, and also talking to some of the parents on the PTO, there's really not someone on that board, like I currently have a child in the school system. I'm, really have skin in the game. I want to be that person for the parents that, if you have issues, if you have problems, I'm a person that they can come to, talk about it. And, I'm not saying that I can promise to solve any of all the problems, but, I can help people, I can advocate, I can lead them in the right direction, I can, give them the resources that they need. I really want to be that person that can make that meaningful impact to the families.
Thank you. David?
Yes, thank you. So what I noticed about the school department, I used to be involved while on the finance committee in the early years when Dr. Rizzi was here, and I used to be part of the subcommittee to go over the budget and got into really, what are the pain points? What would you, if you could have the budget you wanted, which was substantial, the goal back then was to get above, the student average in the town. When we were behind, we were spending about $1,000 per student per year less than everybody else comparable to Stoughton. But at that time, there was no, interest in beefing up necessarily the special ed. It was to make it stable. But there were talk, make sure, the busing was easy, make sure the programs for sports and other after-school programs and all these there were a lot of wonderful ideas that came from beefing up the budget. But what happened was that they couldn't get the money. But when you look at the results, and back then you could look at scores. There were MCAS scores. Today you can't get MCAS scores because they stopped doing them. But we do have just finishing our MCAS results. But back then, you were getting about average results from Stoughton students. But she was getting less than average budgets. So I always thought that was interesting, and I gave her a lot of kudos when she was in her retirement to say we should all be grateful that if she had her way, we would have spent $40 million over her 10-year term. But she didn't spend that $40 million and was able to still produce average results in Stoughton, which was phenomenal. A state like Massachusetts hitting average is pretty good when you look at the national picture in terms of how Massachusetts stacks up. So it was pretty impressive what she was able to do. Today, you don't hear about that. Today, you hear about the need for extra teachers in the classroom. You have to get your special needs. You have to add, you have to be able to take care of every single student in the town. You have no choice. You have to take it. There's all these mandates. So then I started wondering, well, why do we have so many mandates? And then we saw budget changes. We saw a flood of money coming in from the state. So while Dr. Rizzi was trying to get an increase from taxpayers to contribute to the school budget, what you saw them noticing that you couldn't squeeze any more blood from that stone, so they went to the state. And the state we started applying for grants. And now we have a flood of $14 million of extra budget, which is it's like 15% more year over year in the past 4 years that came in. And I started saying, well, how stable is that a source? Is that going to be sustainable? And what does it do in terms of mandates? So what happened was through all those years, we used to spend about $20 million a year of state money, and the town was putting in $30 million. So we were always, a cushion of almost $10 million ahead of what the state was matching. This year, for the first time, it actually flipped. We have 53% or more from subsidy coming in to take care of our children, and 47% in local. When you look at that, you have to be careful, because now, instead of the faculty being able to control how they do things, they don't have as much control because it's all going to come in with state mandates. And with state mandates come a lot of more and more dependency and that's what my concern is that we have too much dependency on the state. Then there was one more thing, I'll just try to get this in quick, is we also have this school debate going on. And now you start looking at this, and I imagine all the viewers must be
Well,
wondering.
why don't we hold it?
You want me to hold that? I'll
hold
save
on that
it.
one because I
I'll
want to
save
take.
it.
Oh, you know, I
I'll save
gotta save the gems
Yeah.
for last.
Yeah.
Dave, I can't let you take them all for me
Yeah.
at this point. But I want to stay on the budgetary piece because one who operates in terms of business. When I talked about some of the work that I'm engaged in right now, you're in finance, Jillian. You know, the reality is that you got to look at the budgetary piece. So I want you. David made some comments about how do you look at the budget. I know that when I was on town meeting when I was the interim town manager, I learned that town meeting had to up or down the school budget. It wasn't something which the town side could do anything with regards to the school budget, and I suspect that still is the case because as I was advised at that time, that was statutorily determined. On this budget discussion, David, in his comments, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, is saying, yeah, you can accept the federal, he didn't talk about federal, but I want you to talk about that as well, Jillian. You can accept the monies from the federal or state government, but it comes with particular mandates that may not be compatible with what you want to do locally. What is your sense or your response to that?
Yeah, no, I want to touch on some stuff that Dave said. So how funding comes into our town, it's a bit complicated, so I'm going to try to summarize it as simply as I possibly can. So there's something called Chapter 70 funds. This is the funds that the state provides to towns that per student. What Dave talks about, the flooding in of money, that $14 million, that's called SOA funds. So back, I believe it was in 2019, the state passed a legislation that they were underfunding for decades to towns, especially towns with high needs populations. And high needs, it's not just special needs students, it's English learners, it's low income families. These are the people that they require more money per student. Someone from a low income family, you need more money to support that person than someone from a high income family. That's just how math works. So how the state decided to do that was over a period of time, they were going to increase the Chapter 70 funds per town based off of the population. So that is what they are currently doing right now. Those funds don't get given to us until January is when the governor puts their budget in. So you do see this influx of funds coming in. Those funds are specifically for our kids in our community that really need those funds. So that's kind of in just like a snapshot of that. There are zero mandates associated with that from the federal government. This is all coming from the state. The state's requirements are relatively simple. I actually think there's probably should be more mandates on the education, but there's nothing specific tied to those funds on how we go about and utilize those, as long as we're spending them for the students. As it goes to the budgeting from there, that gets a little bit more complex when it comes to the school committee. I haven't had the opportunity to sit and look at the budget of the current school system, and that's something that I'm very eager to do, to see what we're utilizing those funds for. But specifically, any funds that are coming in from the state, those are for our children. And they're specifically designed so that getting those are for the kids in the high needs populations.
All right. And Jennifer?
I'm going to build a little on Jillian because it's funny, I was in an IEP meeting today. So about an hour of my day was spent, helping a student with the special ed teacher in the town they're from, going over their IEP. What is in an IEP? We have to follow that. It's not a mandate. That's something that it takes a lot for a town, usually a special ed teacher, a couple of them come together. What's going to be the best for that student? And I don't know why anybody would turn down state funds. I was at the Wilkins a few weeks ago here in the morning to go on a field trip, and buses are a problem. And I know when I was teaching in another town, if I could get a bus, the field trip could happen because buses are probably the most expensive part of the field trip. And if a state would pay for the buses, I was taking it. And that's the same with an IEP. We want to try to educate as many students as we can here in Stoughton, because if we can't offer them the programs, then we have to find the money to send them to, collaborative schools or other schools that are going to help them. So an IEP has to be followed. It's not mandated. That's because the special ed teachers sat down, looked at all the test scores between MCAS, MAP testing, other testing we give students, access, which would be for ELLs, and decide what's the best for those students.
Well, when you speak about special needs students or students who are in IEP, my wife that's what English language arts special needs a retired teacher in Boston, so I'm quite familiar with the processes that they have to go through. But I want to ask you, David, on that particular point, oftentimes what happens is that if the locality cannot get the proper program for that student on IEP, you have to do out-of-district placements. What is your views, if you have one, on those out-of-district placements, which can be quite costly to the municipality?
Yeah, first I'd just like to correct some information. The Student Opportunity Act is a grant program. It was a 7-year grant program. There's maybe 2 years left of that grant. And it's been announced by the superintendent that that's being folded over into the regular Chapter 70 funding source. So it's being converted from grant to subsidy. So that'll be a permanent situation. But what they use grants for to do is to shape your education plan, because if you want those monies, your education plan has to be drafted in just the right way to meet the needs that the state wants to see, and in this case, in special needs. Now, in terms of like the other aspect, it was also talked about what is high needs, and that was also interesting. And by the way, we almost doubled the number of students getting an IEP today compared to where we were before taking Student Opportunity Act money. Now, I'm kind of like a cause and effect kind of person. I see new monies coming in very specifically for a thing like a special needs program, and then I see a lot of new enrollment into an IEP. Is it somehow that money tied to a program attracts more and more special needs? I don't know, but I want to understand it better, and which is why in my announced candidacy, I said I want to put a pause on these grants because I want to get a better handle on what is driving the cause and effect, which is driving lots and lots more students into becoming IEP or becoming families who arrive needing an IEP.
But why
And
would
the
you
other,
want to stop
hold on.
giving
Hold on a minute.
money to
Hold on,
children?
Jillian. Hold on,
Yeah.
Jillian. I'll
I didn't finish.
you get your chance.
I have more. I have
Yeah.
more. I also noticed that instead of just keeping it at the 800 or so students on an IEP, which is under, like around 20% of the entire student population, they added high needs because low income takes that number over 50%. Now, when you have a high needs category, the state looks at us and says, that's the kind of community we want to throw a lot of money into, because now we're considered an urban school district, just in the school district, and the poverty level is over 50% within the student population. And because of that, they categorize as an urban school district. And I said, well, what is so unique about a low-income student? I said, what do they need? They need to be warm. They need dry feet. They need to be fed. Those are reasonable things to expect for somebody in low income. But do they need an accommodation? I don't think so. I think if you look back, I did some reading about a lady that everybody here knows. Her name's Oprah Winfrey. She was raised in the Deep South, and she was abused as a child, and she was in extreme poverty. And she came up through a school system without all the programs that we see like here in Massachusetts, and look what she became, a multi-billionaire. She's an icon. She's very articulate.
Right.
I'm just saying, students that are low income, they're just like everybody else. They just need a chance, and they need a chance to be well clothed, dry, and fed.
Okay.
And that's how I don't understand how that requires an IEP. I just don't see it.
Jillian, you wanted to jump in, so
Yeah,
I'm going to give you your opportunity.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
So just a little bit about low income. I grew up in a low income family. My mother worked 2 jobs to put food on the table, to put a roof over our head. I also had a really hard time reading. I had a hard time doing math. I struggled in school. I got really bad grades. My mom was not there at home to help me. My daughter also struggles with reading. She struggles with math. But as I'm home cooking dinner, my husband sits with her and goes through her homework and helps study with her. That is the difference between a normal income family and a low income family. That's why these kids need a little extra help. Parents who might have to work early in the morning and they don't have time to give their kids breakfast or to pack a lunch for them, which is one of the reasons why we've invested into having free lunches at school and free breakfast at school for these children who just, their parents are doing the best they can. They're working the hardest that they can, but they just can't give everything that they could that a more privileged family could. And when you say that you're going to put a hold on receiving these funds, Dave, like a hold for these families that need this money, that need these, that's terrifying to say that to people. Like, they're scared.
So in terms of that's, again, I know that, and there are going to be differing of opinions, and that's the reason why there's more than one person that's running in here. And I want folks to know your positions on that. So I think there's clarity on it. I know David would like to respond, but I'm not going to let him because we're not doing a debate. I'm going to go to Jen, who does teach IEP in so many settings, yes. And I'm sure that David, when I come back to him, he's going to take the time to respond to it anyway. So I'm going to give him that freedom, but he'll have to go in succession to get there. But Jen, you have it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to build on Jillian, definitely, with the IEPs. I mean, I'm dyslexic, so I was on an IEP. I was not low income, so that was not something that I had to, but I was lucky enough that I had parents at home. My mom worked as a nurse. My dad was a blue collar, but was still home and able to help me out, and I've been successful because of that. But not all families have that, and I see that in the schools. We have kids that get dropped off right at 7 o'clock and are at school until the pickup because parents are working 2 jobs, and then they go home, make dinner, and go to bed. And they need that extra help. Sometimes it's not an IEP. Sometimes it's just a 504 because maybe that kid needs a break during the day. They just might need to be able to leave the room a few more times than somebody else. That can be as simple as the IEP is. The IEP could just say they need a little longer time for testing. That's another thing that an IEP can say. It could say the testing has to take place in a smaller room.
Could be a counselor.
It could be just how many times they see a counselor a week. It doesn't have to be, it could be speech. It does not have to be something big, but I think we're seeing an increase of kids on IEP because families are realizing that these students need extra help. And I think a lot of it came out with the pandemic, sad to say, that we saw how many more kids struggled, what their home life was like during the pandemic, because we were actually, as teachers, seeing the houses through those, computer screens, what was going on at home. And I think that's it. As a teacher, if we see a kid struggling, the first thing we do is we go and start the process. How can we help this kid? Everybody wants a kid to succeed, to graduate. I say that to my students all the time. Nobody cares when you graduate as long as you graduate. And
I want to come back to the question because I haven't gotten the answer yet, and I want to start with you, Jen, and that's the one where I talked about. It falls into the discussion around IEP 504. These are all things that I'm familiar with because of my wife's being an educator. But you're coming from a different place when you sit as a school committee. You're overseeing a manager in terms of that superintendent. So you're also looking at budgets and costs and things of that nature. So how do you view the I want each of you to sit wearing your school committee person's hat and say, we have a situation, we have to talk about out of school placements. So that's one piece I want you to respond to, each of you. And then the other one is, all right, the superintendent has already been decided for for the system. And if you want to say how you feel about that's fine, but nonetheless, you're going to have to work with that superintendent, Julie, who I know, for a long, long time, where she was at Stoughton High. So my sense of it is, on those two questions, starting with you, Jen, and we're going to go down the line, the out of placement and in terms of the working with the superintendent and trying to move these issues forward.
Okay, well, I think a new school could help with some of the out of placement, because I think we could offer classrooms that maybe a student is now leaving our system for because we don't have the space because our schools are so overcrowded. But a new school with new classrooms available, we could see that. We could hire teachers, so maybe we'd have less students leaving the system. But I do think if their best education is going to be at a collaborative or a different program, then we need to look at what's best for that student. And how can we do that? If we can't successfully educate them in Stoughton, then we need to help them get the best education so they can grow up to be productive adults and do it. I mean, I know there's a big case right now in Hartford, Connecticut. Somebody said they graduated, they never learned to read. How did that happen? And I don't want to ever see that happen here in Stoughton. As for the new superintendent, I don't know Julie. I'm excited to work with her. I know Dr. Baeta. I graduated high school with Dr. Baeta, so I've known him since we were in high school together. But I don't know Julie, but I'm excited to work with her and see what she's, her thoughts are. I just know as what people say about her as the principal of the high school. She seems to be well liked, and I'm looking forward to working with her.
Jillian?
Well, when it comes to the out of district children, the law is the law, so we uphold that. We're not going to open ourselves to any legal lawsuits for not providing to students in need. I also want to remind people that compassion and understanding is not a billable line item. It's not in any budget, and you can approach every situation with just compassion, understanding, and respect for somebody. And when it comes to working with Juliet Miller, I don't really know her. I have met with Dr. Baeta. He's a tremendous person. He's recommended her highly. I've spoken to other principals in the town. They also speak very highly of her. So since those are the people that are going to be working with her closely over the next year, I'm excited to be able to work with her.
Great. David?
Okay, so I have to come back to it.
Oh, I know you would.
All right. So first of all, a pause is not a cut in grants because it's just the cause and effect thing. I believe we need to take a look at it because we're taking a lot of money and we don't really know what the effect is other than the fact that we have a lot more students to take care of. They're crowding our schools. There's a big shift in everything going on in the school system. It's huge. The impact seems to be tied to the finances. So I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing and we get back to fundamentals, which is what a school should be. It should be a school that helps students in a reasonable environment for special needs with IEPs and so forth. As far as what do I think about special needs kids? I have one living with me right now, so it's not like I have this animosity towards special needs. There's nothing like that. It's just that, do I think that we are the best source to take care of them? Outplacement worked for my daughter. I was able to get a diploma within 10 months for her, and she wasn't going to be able to get that inside the system. So there's definitely, I believe, care needs to be given in terms of what is the purpose of a school system. Because what I saw was, especially if you listen, and I like Dr. Baeta because he's very transparent. He tells you exactly what it's like, what's going on. He gives you the real details of what you want to know. And he talks about trying to avoid outplacement. He said we need to try to educate everybody, and if you have to do a single kid with a very unique medical condition, he's obviously not going to hire one special needs person just for that one child. It's got to be, that's got to be a situation where you outplace. But it seems like to me that they keep hiring more and more specialists in order to kind of retain as many of the children as they can. So it's a great question. And by the way, I think some of these questions are much broader. It's like a national problem. I see that, children, there's a lot bigger caseload of autism cases. So I hear these stories all the time. So I wonder, what's going on nationally and how much did the COVID pandemic, it was brought up with Dr. Sears about that. And yes, that's got to be layered into it too. We used to get ESSER grant money, and you see communities, by the way, all surrounding us who are desperately trying to get money back from all the money they lost because of COVID, and they were given grants and now they're taken away.
So what about the superintendent?
Superintendent is terrific, and Julie Miller, I'm very confident. I've seen her for many years. She's been around as long as I've been involved with the town, so I've never seen any problems with having. She's very intelligent. She speaks very well. I've watched her in the meetings. I mean, she got a very quick process to be hired. I was like, wow, it was amazing how quickly she got hired. But in terms of outplacement, I just think we have to take a careful look at it because there's so many children who need help. I just think that the state is, when you have a dependency on the grants, that you're finding that they're picking winners and losers. Stoughton is being chosen as a quote-unquote winner where we get the flood of money. But all these surrounding towns, you see them, they're going through override votes, they're going through cuts. You see Milton is going through it, I know is going through an override situation for millions of dollars just because of the school system. And there's other communities going through the same thing. So, by the way, 2/3 of this cities and towns are losing money from Chapter 70. We're one of the 1/3 of communities that's picking up money. So we're creating almost like these islands or oases where you have a desert of towns surrounding that don't have the resources. And I just want to make sure that we're not slipping in terms of our focus. How much are we sacrificing educationally? We don't even have measurement of MCAS anymore. So how do we even assess whether or not it's a positive to be so focused on special needs? So,
well, you raised issues, and now I'm going to go to the, as they say, the elephant in the room question, because it's you talked about that towns are going for overrides. They're trying to find all types of ways to fund all aspects of education, be it facilities, programs, and otherwise. Well, we here in Stoughton, we have a matter that's going to be on the ballot around the debt exclusion, which talks about the need for a elementary school. For full disclosure, I served on the task force that only view was to bring the information forward so people can make an informed decision. So how I might feel about it is not important for me, but it's important for voters to know how each of you feel about that particular issue. And so I'm going to, since I'm keep moving around and want to do that, so I'm going to come to you first, David.
Okay.
In terms of the, on the debt exclusion, which will be on the ballot, with regards to whether or in what form there will be a new elementary school, which has already been determined that's what the town needs. So,
okay, thank you.
Specifically on the debt exclusion.
Yeah. So last June, we had an election, and almost 600 votes said they did not want to go with this project. Here we are. Then what happened is that you saw a lot of lobbying going on up in Boston to try to get an extension on the MSBA grant in order to force a revote. So in other words, the majority of people in the town were being disregarded in how they express themselves, starting with people in office not representing all of Stoughton and their majority decision, but looking to say, let's give the minority in the town a chance to fight again for the same thing. And now when you look at fast forward, and here we are, I started to look at how on earth could you see on one side of town, on the municipal side, we used to call it one end of Pearl Street, is getting a flood of money, and they brag about this, $5 to $6 million added to the budget. This is year-over-year money that comes in, new tax base, commercial and industrial monies that will stay on the books for decades out, covering whatever costs we have in running our town. And on the other side of town, they're saying, we're starved for money. We can't afford this school. We need to have you pay for a debt override. And I'm like, why on earth would you have on one side $5 or $6 million of added money and a debt override that's going to cost $4 million a year? It's like there's such a disconnect between people thinking that they have to ask the taxpayer every single time for every, we have the high school, the fire station, we're soon to have the OMS. We're going to have the high school on the books until 2037. And this school, if it came online, we'd be paying for this school plus the high school, only to have the middle school come in at almost $300 million when that's ready to come up. So people are getting deluged. They're feeling the pinch in terms of inflation. We need to give the taxpayers a break. It's absurd to think that we should be asking for an override for a school that could be afforded within the budget we already have. Why on earth we're doing it, I have no idea. But that's part of I'm very passionate about this. I don't think that the school is designed right. I think it's overpriced. We don't need a pinwheel design. And I know they're going to say we need lighting for the children and this and that, but it's over designed. It's $900+ per square foot, which is at the very high end of what it costs to build a school these days. We're not the highest end towns in the Commonwealth. Why would we go for the top of the line cost to build it? So that's a problem. And by the way, just to bring in the whole thing about the special needs. A third of the space in this building is not even general education. It's for special needs. So, what are we becoming? Are we becoming a collaborative? I know we can't be a collaborative because no school can be a collaborative. It's illegal. But did they come up to just that 1/3 number because it's just within the parameters that the state allows? I just don't like the fact that we're shifting focus so heavily into special needs.
Well, let's stay with the issue of the debt exclusion.
Well,
I know that's
the debt
part of it.
exclusion is for a program that is poorly designed.
Okay.
It should be for general ed. We're losing general ed class space, and we're crying about the size of classrooms and how we're. And one last, this is very, very important. One last thing. If it was a space problem, why would they build a school to consolidate 2 for the size of 2 short 5 classrooms, by the way, of general ed? You have to they make it up with special needs classrooms, I know. Why don't they keep the Wilkins a K through 5 if they really need space? It's because.
Well, I think just to be fair, and I'm going to move to Jillian in a minute, and then to Jennifer. Having served on that, some of that information is debatable, but in any event, I'll let it go. Jillian, you're on.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna try to go through just Dave's points one for one. I think the first thing he brought up was the municipal park bringing in tax revenue. So I just want to make it very clear that you cannot earmark tax revenue that's not realized funds. That's potential tax revenue. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Those businesses could go out of business. We could not be getting those taxes. They could move. That's not something guaranteed for the cost of the town. So that's one. For the new school, I think everyone in the entire town agrees that the South School needs to be replaced. It needed to be replaced like 20 years ago. When it comes to the design, this pinwheel design is actually the least expensive option that we were able to come up with. The pinwheel, which everyone's like, why is it designed like this? Why is it overbuilt like this? It's actually very cost effective. It's cost effective just through energy efficiency. It allows windows, and I know you mentioned like, why do our kids need windows? We don't want it to be like they're in prison. There's a certain regulation that certain classrooms need window sizes, and the design of this building allows maximum windows for the least amount of cost. If you're going to build like a basic square box of a building, to get the window space, you have to keep building up, and you just don't get that. So this pinwheel design is specifically designed to maximize the window space. It also is designed to have the least visual views for classrooms, because God forbid if like there's a school shooter or something horrible like that, you can't point down a hallway. I mean, I know it's horrible to even like have to think like that, but that's why these schools are being designed these ways, unfortunately. Now, when it comes to the classroom sizes, I think Dave really didn't mention that we're redistricting. The school was designed and the classroom sizes were designed for growth. We are going to have excess space to add more students to it. Everybody's going to get redistricted, so it's going to be sent across the Daw School, the Gibbons School. The Jones School is going to be closed, and they're going to move those kids over to the Wilkins School for the preschool, and that's going to be able to expand preschool in our town. And I think every parent right now can understand the benefits of having affordable childcare for under 5-year-old kids. That's going to expand that out. That's also revenue. We're going to be able to sell the South School. We're going to be able to sell the Jones School. That is $7 to $10 million of revenue for our town. We can even take that space and not sell it and reutilize it for other things, like senior housing is a big thing that we're thinking about doing for the Jones School. I honestly can't imagine, even if you're a fiscal conservative, to not want to get this South School and do this debt exclusion. It's the most cost-effective option that's going to solve all of our problems. You can't keep the Wilkins School as an elementary school. It's going to cost $45 million at the bare minimum just to get the repairs to meet the qualifications for it to be an elementary school. So I really do urge people to vote yes this coming April 8th. It's going to be the most cost-effective way for our town to move forward.
Jennifer.
Well, Julian said a lot of what I was going to say, but I can build on that. I mean, I know, again, that this is going to be the best thing for the town. The one thing I like about the new school is because I know our town is growing, it can add a floor onto the school. Mm-hmm. The school can be added onto. So if you think about that, if the town keeps growing the way it's growing, we could just add a floor. We don't need a new school. By closing, the Jones is over 100 years old. They said heating the Jones costs more than it does to heat the high school because of it. So just by closing the Jones, that's going to save us a lot of money. The new South School is going to be energy efficient. I know my own mother voted no the first time. She has completely changed her mind when I brought her all the things, and she said, it's going to cost more if I vote no than if I vote yes. And I said, you're right, because we're going to end up having to put these modulars at the school. Nobody wants to educate. As a teacher, the last thing I want to teach in is a modular. And then when you add the modular, you need to add some way those kids can get back into the school. So now we have to build a structure. Otherwise, we live in New England. We can't be outside in January having the kids go into the cafeteria or the gym at the school. And you also have to think, it's sad to say, but security nowadays. There are school shooters. We have to train for that. A modular would leave students open to that. So that's something that we need to. And again, for money, I said it earlier, money saving, we talk about these special needs students. If we can have some programs in our own schools, we would not have to send kids out. So if you do all the math, it only makes sense. You know, it's going to save money. The South School has to close. I had one of my little friends in 3rd grade, he was taking the MCAS last year, and it was raining on his head during the MCAS. How, successful is that? And the MCAS now are done on computers, so I'm wondering how safe is that too as rain is coming down on their heads.
Well, what I wanted, I wanted to have us have this conversation about that because there are differing views, and I just say to our viewing audience, read the information. Mm-hmm. There's information online. There's information in the Stoughton Shopper. There was the report that was done by the task force that I sit on, and basically read the information, apply it, and make your determination based upon what you have read, what you have heard, what you do understand, but more importantly, vote on April 8th. Yes. The problem with the last, from my vantage point, as one who will do absentee ballots and everything else if I'm not going to be present, is that the paucity of the number of people who vote, I think it was under 13% who voted of the registered voters in town. So the only thing I can encourage folks, participate in the process, whichever way you're going to go, and that's not my job to tell you that, but I wanted you to hear from the persons who are seeking to represent us in the schools here in town, to hear from them where they are. Let me just shift, because we're getting to about less than 10 minutes now, and I've always said with regards to education, it's a four-legged stool. There's parents, there's students, there's the educators, and the administration. That's how I see it, and my view has been that, and my wife tells me stop talking about education issues, but you just have to see the program to say I did it again. That oftentimes the legs on the stool are just not even. How would you address the issues of getting student involvement and, more importantly, parental involvement in what's going on in the school? Jillian.
So first and foremost, from that four-leg stool, I think that the students are the most important thing. Focusing on that. I want to kind of bring it back on a statement I made originally, is that respect and compassion are not billable line items. And when you engage with students and teachers and families with that respect and that compassion, that understanding, you're going to get more involvement from them. People are not going to be concerned or angry or agitated when they come to you with problems. They're going to come to someone who can listen, someone who can give them the information that they need. So how I would go about doing that is really just being that advocate, being that beacon of information to those families, so that they'll be more apt to come forward, more apt to talk and be part of their families' lives.
Jennifer?
I think that the big thing, I think schools are almost like, I'm going to say students are like consumers. And if the consumer's not happy, then they go home and complain to their parents. The parents go to the school, complain to the teachers, the administration. So I think that we have to look at students. So we have to offer things beyond just the school curriculum, that makes students happy. Why do students want to get up every day and go to school? Because happy schools are going to, definitely push students. If they're happy to go there, they're going to want to go to school. And if the students are happy, then I think that makes the teachers happy, the administration, they're going home to their parents. And it's better. I mean, we should be proud of this town. We have one of the best, I think, bands in the country. Mm-hmm. We know the drama won first place this past week. I know I did a lot of sports when I was in high school. I think we have some great sports teams. We offer some great opportunities in this town, and I want to see them going and continue that. And I just think we need to make sure that our consumers are happy.
David?
Yeah, thank you. Just want to correct one item, which is the monies that are available from all the growth in the town is available for any project. As of July 1st of this year, all those monies become available. So it's not like, it takes years to find that money. We actually did this special article that allowed it to come in.
All right, well, our time is running short.
I wanted to make sure
that
to correct the record. The money is there. We're flush with money for any idea, whether it's a good one or a bad one. We have the money.
Okay.
But on this topic, I just think that if you want to engage the young ones, the ones K through 5, you got to get these Chromebooks out of their hands. We don't want to keep putting technology in the hands of these kids. These kids are coming up in middle school, having access to cell phones. Little kids should not be on this. They should be learning fundamentals. Back in the day, it used to be about reading is fundamental, arithmetic, those things where people use their hands. They need more tactical, where they're using their fingers and their senses, their hearing, their sight. They need to be able to express themselves in a way that's perfect for their age. They'll eventually be able to grow up to become more advanced in doing more, critical thinking and things as they go up through the grades. But I just think it's inappropriate to, force high-tech learning on the very young. They should be learning fundamentals, and they should be just learning at those ages in sciences and social studies on stimulating topics in those areas, but just not through technology. So I think that would do it. And I think Dr. Sears, when she talked about, the band and the sports and all these things that we're terrific at, and we should get in drama. It is terrific. I was a drama minor in college, and I just love theater. And I think our program, Kevin Halleck, is tremendous. He developed that program.
David,
But
I hate to cut you.
I just think that
I need you to wrap because I want you to get 1 minute to be able to give your closing arguments.
All of these extracurricular less technology, and developing all of these terrific programs are the way to do it.
Well, I first want to say thank you to all of you. I'm going to give each of you a minute to be able to give your closing statement. so you can speak directly to the voters. So, David, you're first.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to come into your homes to talk about my candidacy. I look forward to working on the school committee. I ask for your vote. I'm going to bring a financial background, understanding municipal finance, to some of the things that are kind of a little bit hard to understand, why things are in such like disarray, where you'd have to ask for overrides when we're so flush with money. So we need to kind of make sense of it. We need to balance how we look at budgets and the way we educate our children. And I would just want to bring that element to a 5-member school committee. And I do it because I've always
David,
wanted
I got to
do
cut you.
that.
You
That's
are
1 minute?
No,
I
no,
use
no,
my
no,
minute?
no. I'm watching the clock. I only have a few more minutes.
Go
so
for it.
tell them you said
Thank
you
for
wanted
your
to vote for. Thank
on
you,
April 8th.
Jillian.
Stoughton, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Thank you, Joseph, for bringing this together. I want you to know that I'm a mother here in Stoughton. I have a daughter here. I have real skin in the game to make sure that she gets the best education possible. I also am so happy that they're teaching my child how to use technology in her 3rd grade classroom, even starting when she was in kindergarten, because that's important for this day and age, for them to know how to use technology. I also want to tell you that I'm going to approach everything with compassion, respect, and understanding. I want to be the beacon for you when you need help to come to me.
And you need to wrap.
Please vote for me.
Jennifer.
I again want to thank you, Joseph and David and Jillian, for being here. I'm asking you for my vote. I am a seasoned educator and a seasoned townie, I guess is the best word for it. I love this town, and I want to continue supporting this town by making sure that our schools are the best schools that we have, keep strong programs going, making sure that all students, no matter if they're IEP, ELs, or whatever they are, they get the best education that Stoughton has. So I'm asking for your vote on April 8th, and also vote yes for the school.
Well, folks, I want to thank you, David Lurie, Jillian DeStefano, and Jennifer Sears. I wish you luck or success. I don't believe in luck, but I wish for you a great campaign and the outcome that you desire. I want to thank Luke Asak, the producer of the program. This is a special program that I'm doing tonight with regards to the candidates for school committee. So I hope you, the viewing audience, have been informed, have learned something about the candidates, know where they stand on the particular issues, but I can't stress it more. We need for you to go out on April 8th and let your opinion be known. So vote, vote, vote. Again, thank you folks for being on the program today.
Thank you.